Since there's been games about punching things, and if you haven't played 1991's Shatterhand for NES, then you're missing out on one of the best. Released under a different name in Japan as a tie-in for a superhero show, in the West, it got an original branding and premise, one that elevates it just that little more into a true gamer's game. In the far, far off year of 2030, an officer from the Bronx is mutilated by a cyborg attacker. Rebuilt with powerful robot arms, he becomes Shatterhand, now on a mission to take down a rogue army of cyborg soldiers threatening global domination. And of course, he wears shades while doing it. The first few seconds of the game present an awesome little moment of storytelling you get to take the wheel of. Shatterhand bursts into the level as abruptly as the music, which immediately starts jamming with almost no build-up. Then, only a few seconds later, the game is having you punch through a wall. Shatterhand demoing his newfound strength by bursting into the enemy base, no dams given. Thus begins one of the NES's most explosive, yet polished action games, weaving in chaotic destruction with precise, graceful gameplay. The title has 7 levels that all culminate in a boss, an intro stage, a final stage, and 5 more in between you can do in any order. From possibly the hardest level select screen in history, Shatterhand on the cliff's edge, wind blowing, as he picks and chooses where he's dropping next. Sick. Shatterhand is all about those hands, so the name of the game is getting in close to lay the smackdown, and those smackdowns feel good. Enemies will either burst like a balloon or even better, sometimes fly back across the stage before doing so. Shatterhand joins the ranks of many NES characters who wear some kind of sleeveless garment, so those 8-bit pixels can give us a good idea of where those arms are striking. Punching is a way of life in Shatterhand. Bag full of cash, punch it. Bombs falling from the sky, punch them out. Bullet coming at you, you get the idea. There are a few other avenues of attack though. Find 3 of these letter cards in a level, and you can summon a drone guy to fly around to attack with you in unison. There are 8 different types depending on the letters chosen, and it really is up to you to choose, since you can pick what letter the card gives you by, you guessed it, punching it. These little guys can be quite the game changers, as they can be ideal for taking out awkwardly placed enemies from afar. You can even grab them to fly, and if you're feeling really cheeky, even throw them at enemies. A really cool touch. Of course, you'll only get to do this if you can keep these little robot pals alive, as they take damage and can go down pretty quickly. You'll want to keep your eye on them. They move where you move more or less, but it can be hard to predict sometimes. One sneaky trick is just to chuck your guy off the stage, giving you a few moments to navigate something tough before they come back, likely a little miffed. Mixed in with these mechanics are a very diverse set of stages, keeping the ingredients fresh in this knuckle sandwich of a game. You have these metal grates that SH can casually hold onto with one hand, while still punching with the other. They can serve as good vantage points, especially for your drone of choice. Almost every level, though, has a unique element. Area D has this underwater segment that allows for higher jumping. Area F has the classic big lift stage, but there are some more unusual gimmicks too. Area E has these anti-grav pads that will have you jumping from ceiling to ceiling. You'll be using them to dodge back and forth across the stage while maybe trying to deal damage on the way. One of my favorite surprises comes in Area C, where you run into what looks like another wall that needs to be caved in to progress. Only upon busting through, it turns out to be a giant test tube for a 10-foot-tall flesh zombie. These guys continue to pop up throughout the stage, creating a challenging little scenario, where these hulks need to be taken care of, while from behind, these other little flying buggers come in, forcing you to quickly switch back and forth between doing damage for both. My least favorite gimmick would probably have to be these falling rocks at the start of Area E. Out of all the stage hazards, they are especially sudden and tough to avoid on your first attempts. Most bosses make use of the level's theme to round out the stage nicely. I honestly kind of like how they don't have visible health bars. The only indication of their status you get is that they start flashing red when they're nearly done. It helps get you caught up in the story of the battle. You spend most of the fight on the back foot, gritting your teeth, getting in licks where you can, with no idea how tough the enemy is, how long they can last. And that perseverance pays off the moment they start to flash red, and you know you have the upper hand, and the next beatdown you get in might just be the last you need. This is the part of the fight where you could easily get cocky and start wailing away while tanking hits. Devastating if that makes you lose, but in a way kind of satisfying to pull off. Another element that runs throughout the game is collecting coins to use on special purchase pads. They drop from crates or defeated foes. And it's nice that enemies drop something of practical use like this. A 100 coin pad can get you a temporary damage boost that can last indefinitely, as long as you don't get hit too much. A 300 coin one will refill your health, and the rare 2000 coin pad will give you an extra life. On a related note, the money bags that simply ask of you to mash the punch button fast to get the most coins out might seem a bit mindless, but they still require paying attention, since sometimes the boxes they're hidden in can have a grenade in instead. All of these different things in play, and you're probably wondering how hard all of this ends up being. Well, what I like about Shatterhand is that it's tough but very fair. Like any good side-scrolling action platformer game, most situations here can be clearly read a moment in advance, like a sort of puzzle that an astute player can then execute a solution for flawlessly. Perhaps more importantly, things behave at a glance as you might expect them to. There aren't any weird enemies that continuously respawn in stupid places for no reason, for example. So if you tried the original Ninja Gaidens and ever noped out because it was just too much, this game isn't quite as hardcore as that. Bosses can present the biggest roadblock, as while the game has infinite continues, you'll be knocked back to the start of the stage if you lose all your lives while fighting them. Like plenty of older games though, your chances against a boss will dramatically raise if you arrive at it bulked out with kit, so sometimes it might be in your best interest to start the level over anyway. If you collect the same robot twice in a row while the first is still alive, Shatterhand will don a robot suit all his own for a short period, one that basically shrugs off hits and can shoot giant fireballs. You can make mincemeat of the bosses if you can get into one with this ultimate power-up engaged, basically bypassing the considered challenge they present otherwise. I don't entirely mind this though. After all, it means the game is basically checking for one of two things when you clear an area. Did you master the boss, no power-ups needed, or did you master the level itself to make it to the end so duked out the boss was easy peasy? Back to the point though, I'd say the average gamer with some patience can make it through most of this game. Though I will say the final level is a sickeningly challenging stage / boss rush that will probably take you a few hours of persistence to master. Is it worth beating? Well, it's an NES action game, so you won't exactly be getting answers to any burning questions. But I will say, and I won't spoil it here, the final boss does go down in exactly the kind of satisfying way you'd want to see at the end of such a brutal gauntlet. And the final couple screens do go pretty hard for what they are. Challenge aside, the game is also one of the better looking and sounding titles on the console. The game has a dark look fitting for these gritty settings. Factories, weird flooded labs, burning subways. Either way, I've always felt that the games on NES that skewed towards darker palettes ended up looking better anyway. When games on the console would try for bright colors, to me they often end up looking a bit sickly. Or maybe I'm just, really cool or something. The game's soundtrack is also pretty savage. Special shout out goes to the Area C theme, which manages to get a little soulful amongst all the action. My major gripe with the OST would probably be a lack of a proper final boss theme, since it just uses the same track as all the others. Shatterhand was one of the later games for the NES, the developers at Natsume working at the twilight of that system to squeeze one more epic action game out of a console about to be overshadowed by more powerful systems. It won't ever cease to impress me though how much character and style creators like this were able to beat out of such limited machinery. To have so little to work with and still manage to tell the often simple but uniquely personal and involving stories only games can tell. Where the creators like Shatterhands are writing in cool surprises, the twists the main character has to overcome, but it's up to the player to write the brutal outcome, and quickly, before the game decides it for them. And here, all that with just a 1/4 megabyte of data. I guess you could say Shatterhand punched above its weight class, or shatters expectations. But I won't end on such a trite note. And for that, I think you, gotta hand it to me.